This program is recorded and presented by Chippewa Valley Community Television. This is a rebroadcast of the Eau Claire School Board meeting. The audio for this program can be heard on WRFP LP 101.9 FM.
We'll call to order tonight's Board of Education meeting. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Secretary Iverson, have we complied with the open meetings law notification this evening?
Yes, we have.
Thank you. Could you please do a roll call to verify quorum?
You bet. Commissioner Duax? Present. Commissioner Hombach-Boyle?
Here.
Commissioner Johnson?
Here.
Commissioner Luganbill?
Here.
Commissioner Spindler?
Here.
Commissioner Vu?
Here.
Commissioner Jean?
Here.
All right, great, thank you. First up on our agenda is the public forum, and we have a 30-minute time period for a public forum, and we've got 3 people on it. So please come up and state your name and address. And first we have Amy Carlson Sather, sorry.
Good evening. My name is Amy Carlson Sather, and I live at 2737 K Street in Eau Claire. My colleagues and I work at North Star Middle School. We are passionate about our students and our school. We are committed to creating an environment that fosters a growth mindset and empowers our students to grow academically and emotionally. We deeply believe in educating the whole child. To do this, we have created many meaningful partnerships with our parents and our community. These partnerships allow our students real-world experiences that enrich their learning and allow them to discover their passions. These experiences will provide them with the academic, technological, communication, and critical thinking skills necessary for post-secondary success. We would like to share some of our experiences with you tonight. I am pleased to introduce 2 educators from North Star. They are inspiring students with culturally relevant teaching activities and opportunities to interact with and learn from successful authors that bring content to life. This is Michelle Olson and Paula Tracy.
Great, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Michelle Olson. I live at 3006 Midway Street in Eau Claire. I teach English learners. Grades 6 through 8 at North Star. I also co-teach English 8 this year. I would like to speak to how North Star is creating meaningful partnerships with our families and the community with culturally relevant teaching activities. One of the ways we connect with our EL families and our school community is our annual EL Family Reading Night. We meet in our classroom, we have supper, picnic style on the floor, and we take turns reading like our favorite picture books and multiple languages. We have a few bilingual books. We invite our families to read to their children and in their native language, and then the children take turns reading English back to their families. It's really great watching the parents and other siblings read to each other, and we've had many former North Star students who are not North come back and read with us at night, sometimes in a 3rd language. North EL staff have joined us to connect with those students as well. A number of North Star staff connected with our families and community by attending Hmong New Year this weekend. It's great to see students of all different cultures and ethnicities there supporting all of their classmates, learning about culture. During the month of April, we take a day to dress in traditional Hmong clothing at North Star, staff and students included. Many families send in extra clothes so the staff have something to wear. It's a great way, another way to learn about culture. My final example is our continued work with diversity and collaboration to strengthen our communities and our student skills for the 21st century world. We've hosted 2 very successful programs so far and plan to continue. Our first year we hosted a Hmong Culture Conference. We taught our 6th graders about culture, food, language, in rotating sessions with families and staff from the district. Multi-generational families participated in roundtable discussions with our students. Our second year, we connected on a larger community with Chippewa Valley Technical College, UW Eau Claire, DPI and the WEOP program, Chippewa Valley Museum, the Eau Claire area school board members, a few of you were there, and also we had some city council members. Also, local speakers from the district and the community. Students learned how our diversity is important, why it's necessary to be respectful and inclusive of everyone. They visited displays, they interacted with artifacts from the museum. They focused on American Indian and Hmong history and cultures. They learned about Act 31. They attended breakout sessions addressing unconscious biases, civic engagement, networking, why the path to college readiness starts right now. They were introduced to skills necessary for post-secondary readiness, such as how to understand the differences between their ethnicity and their race, how to ask respectful questions, and how to show empathy. As I look to the future, I would like to be able to make Breeding Night a bigger event and more times throughout the year, and to be able to purchase some new books. The opportunity to bring in speakers from many different cultures to share with our students would add to their educational experience. Please keep these things in mind when you begin to discuss the referendum. We need to add programs, not lose any more. Thank you for this time to speak.
Great, thank you.
Good evening, my name is Paula Tracy and I live at 1314 Kane Road in Eau Claire. I am a 7th grade English teacher at North Star Middle School, and this is my 24th year in the district. At North Star for the past several years, we have paired 6th, 7th, and 8th grade English and reading teachers with a specialist to enhance the education of all students. Our reading specialist, as well as English learner and special education teachers, are co-teaching in the general education classrooms. This valuable opportunity has expanded learning for our students with disabilities and for students in general education. It is incredibly valuable for students in special education to experience universal curriculum classrooms. Our classroom data shows that co-teaching is leading to growth in both special education and general education student performance, confidence, and test scores. Co-teaching leads to greater post-secondary readiness for our students. In the future, we would like to see more financial support to provide additional co-teaching classrooms so more students are able to benefit from this incredible learning opportunity. As class sizes increase, co-teaching helps to meet the needs of all diverse learners. In addition to co-teaching instruction, 7th grade language arts students at North Star Middle School have an extension opportunity through a visiting author presentation. During the Chippewa Valley Book Festival each fall, we are able to bring in one of the festival's authors to present to our 7th graders. It would be wonderful to enhance this experience and add a program for 6th and 8th graders. Additionally, we would like funding to provide small group writing workshops with the author after the presentation. Interacting with a professional writer would allow students to further learn the craft of writing, increase communication skills, and express themselves clearly. Opportunities like this are increasingly important as we work to prepare our students for post-secondary success in the 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle and Paula. One of the things I'm most passionate about is service learning and its impact on students. In my 7th grade social studies classroom, currently my students are getting ready for the yearly ISMS project. This service learning opportunity focuses on ways that we can create a school and community environment that celebrate differences and encourage acceptance of diverse perspectives. Our world and nation clearly need problem solvers. We need people that are really ready to take on those tough issues. And this project allows those, the conversations, the skills that they can get ready to do that. The ISMS project has students pick an ism that they're passionate about. It might be ableism or racism or sexism or sizeism. And then they create a project to express their beliefs. Students have created projects that conveyed their ideas through woodworking, welding. We had a Statue of Liberty with colors of different races, carving, sewing, cross-stitching, painting, origami, pottery, animation, videos, writing letter, and poetry. North Star is filled with their artwork, hopes, and dreams, and these projects are inspiring. They create a growth mindset in our school, and they really help to work to help our students accept and celebrate differences. During our school's Mix It Up Day, our 7th graders are able to share their projects during lunchtime, and this allows students of diverse perspectives to come together and have those meaningful conversations around the isms. It's hard to find a space to do that sometimes. In order to empower our students to bring their ideas to life, I have worked with many staff at North Star, including our administrators, Johanna Peterson, one of our art teachers, Rob Beasy, our technology teacher, Lyle Neiman, one of our custodians, Julie Sabin, our fax teacher, and Cindy Shannon in the technology department. And that doesn't really begin to get at all the people that have helped our students to create these projects. All these people have gone above and beyond and have put in hours of their own time, all because they care about kids and they want them to reach their full potential. They have asked nothing in return. But how long can we continue to ask them to do this? And ultimately, what is that cost? As we look to the future, I would really like to incorporate artists that work with the students into the ISMS project. While teaching in Bemidji, Minnesota, I was able to bring in Ojibwe artists that served as mentors for our kids. That they only not taught art skills and communication skills, but they celebrated culture. And it was so empowering. And that was a culturally relevant activity that was really instrumental in bringing our students the skills they need for post-secondary success. And it closes the achievement gap. Our students in Eau Claire could benefit from opportunities like these. Imagine what they could do if the ISMS project were fully funded. Imagine the academic and personal growth our students would experience and the partnerships that would be created with our parents and the Eau Claire community. As you meet to consider the referendum, please consider a plan that serves to create a growth mindset for our students, staff, and community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Can we
All of
see
you.
what they're holding up? We can't see it.
You want to see it again? Sure. You can come up front and see. Yeah, sure. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you very much for all the presentations. Appreciate it. Okay, that's all that's on our list for tonight for a public forum. Next is the superintendent's report.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you, North Star, for that presentation. I'd like to review the upcoming Board of Education events. November 19th at 7 p.m. in the Administration Building. The school board will hold a closed session to prepare the superintendent's evaluation, and there's a tentative follow-up meeting on November 24th at 6 p.m. in the Administration Building for the same purpose. On November 30th at 11:30 a.m. in the Administration Building, there's a Budget Development Committee. On December 7th at 10:30 a.m. in the Administration, there's a Policy and Governance meeting. On December 7th at 7 p.m., there's a school board meeting. And on December 10th, there's a meeting of the Demographic Trends Committee at 4 p.m. Something that is not on your calendar but should be added. We just got confirmation today that on December 2nd, there will be a meeting of shared services, and 3 of you are members of that committee, and that will be held here at 7:30 in the morning, a.m.
I have a question. Do we have a meeting coming up to pull back the strategic plan in December as well?
Yes, we do have a meeting, and that is on December 2nd in the evening,
Yeah, I
I
have it
believe
here.
at 7 p.m. I believe it's the 7th. Yes, we'll get that on the calendar as well. Thank you. So tonight we have some special guests, members of the Boy Scout Troop, number 36. I think we have 9 scouts who are attending. I'm going to ask them to stand up. Are you? And there they are. Okay. And they're here because they're working on a project and a badge for citizenship, and they're learning about the public process. And we welcome you. Thank you for coming. And then this is the time of year when we get to celebrate a little bit about the success of our athletic teams. And we especially want to recognize Memorial. They won the 2015 Division I State Girls Cross Country title. Aubrey Roberts was the Division I overall individual champion. And so that's a great thing for them. And the Memorial's girls tennis team competed in the state meet, and Catherine Lindsay placed 6th overall. And North also had a participant in both the state girls golf competition and in the cross country meet. We also want to recognize the North High School football and boys soccer teams and Memorial's cross country team with the 2015 fall season Big River Conference Sportsmanship Awards. And Memorial's football team made the Level 3 playoffs, and this is a big deal because it's the first time they've done this since 1987. So congratulations to their coaches and players.
All right, thank you. I did attend that cross-country meet, the state meet, and it was wet. It was pouring the whole time, so I admire the girls for running in that. Next on the agenda is the President's Report. I don't have much to say tonight. I just want to let board members know I got a card from previous business manager Dan Vandewater thanking for the flowers that were given to him, and Commissioner Hambuck Boyle helped arrange that. So I'll just pass this around so board members can read it. I also got a card for Eric Dasher and Jake, who really did a tremendous job filling in for the band program this semester when we lost a band director, Gene Powers. So I just thought it would be nice if the board members could sign a card to him and those two. So I'll pass that around also. So I have no other reports to make tonight. Student rep report. So Jason, you're alone here tonight with this for the student reps. Go ahead.
Thank you. So DECA is currently doing a fundraiser on November 18th at Chipotle. If you guys go, 50% of the profit will go to DECA. And Memorial had a Veterans Day program. Film Club made a film, and Student Council organized a bunch of the flags and everything. And we recognized Mr. Diaz, Mr. Nemeth, Mr. Peterson, and Mr. Yeager for their services to the country. And this week, for students who do take marketing classes or DECA classes, there's this thing called the Real Life Academy, which is basically a money management event that's going on. And it's sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce. And I just wanted to say that this is a great example of how the school and community connect with each other and how much we care for each other. And the Memorial Madrigals, they had the opportunity to go to Minnesota and perform on Veterans Day. And that was really cool because they got to ride a limousine, I believe, up there. And that is all for me. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jason. All right. Let's see. We're at committee reports. So how about we do policy and governance first? Commissioner Duax?
Yes. We met this morning at 10:30, and we've reviewed a first draft of policy 332 on innovation zones. The Charter Choice Committee will take feedback given by the board and bring back a revised policy for the P&G meeting on December 7th. P&G unanimously agreed to bring policy 225, evaluation of the superintendent, to this meeting tonight. It's on our agenda, but we did make one change this morning, so we could have a first reading to say that the copy of the superintendent's evaluation will be kept in the HR office. Also, we added the superintendent's office, and the board clerk will have one. We began drafting a new policy, 133, board vacancies, and we'll bring it back for additional review at the December 7th meeting, P&G meeting. It will be cross-referenced to policy 165, our board code of conduct. We also read that policy 165 to make sure it was in alignment with policy 133. Also on the agenda for December 7th will be a new policy, 447.11, use of seclusion and restraint, 342.7, services programs for ELL students, and policy 342.8, section 504. Hope you got all that. As well as existing policy 343.2 to discuss class size. That's my report.
Great, thank you. Demographic trends, Joe, and facilities, do you want to do that?
Yeah, we met on Tuesday, November 3rd for our first organizational meeting of this school year. We made introductions. We have a new member representing the county board, Stephanie Regenauer will be there now. And we looked over the committee's charge, and we did bring up equity. We talked quite a bit about that again, and we'll be looking at that in the future as a committee. And then the main agenda item was Danny Klaskis from the homeless program presented some statistics dating back. It was at least 5 years, but she actually compiled a lot more for us. And she also brought for us some thank you cards and messages that she's received from the community about the program. And at the next meeting, we're going to be looking at district attendance areas and building capacities. We're going to be reviewing that, looking at the boundaries possibly, and also discussing the needs of Prairie Ridge, Roosevelt, and possibly McKinley. And the committee would like to have a representative of the committee at future meetings pertaining to those areas, and the next meeting we have is on the 10th. So
Perfect, thank you, thank you. We did have a budget committee meeting, but we put that under committee report, so we'll do that later. Am I missing any other committees? Okay, I don't think so. Okay, great. Legislative report, I believe, legislative update? Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
I don't really have, I think I covered pretty much all the things that are in the legislative pipe last meeting, except that WASB just updated the fiscal, and put on their website the state fiscal report, shows where the money comes from and where it goes. And I think this was important for us because there's comparisons back to budgets that we dealt with back in 2007 and 8, which was part of how we presented some of this at the forums for public input. So I'm just going to kind of go over it quickly. Every October, the state government issues its annual fiscal report. They call it the AFR for the fiscal year ending the prior June 30th. Are all of you aware of the AFR, audience? Okay, so this is good. I don't want to be telling you something you don't know, but this was interesting to me. The latest AFR shows Wisconsin closed its books for the 2014-15 state fiscal year with a general fund surplus of $135.6 million. Compared to annual general fund spending, that's where we get our money from in the general fund, of $15.5 billion, that surplus is a modest amount. However, notes the Wisconsin Taxpayer Alliance, compared to the $283.4 million deficit forecast last January, this is a noticeable improvement. So I think we all kind of need to be aware of that. The state's general fund comes largely from income and sales tax receipts. The AFR showed that the state's 2014-15 general tax collections grew by $593.1 million, a 4.3% over the previous year, which the Wisconsin Taxpayer Alliance notes is a moderate in historic terms, but still there's something there that they weren't planning on. So this is the part that's interesting. Spending from the state's general fund, which is the funding source for state aid to public schools, increased by 5.6% in the 14-15, from $14.67 billion to $15.5 billion. A large portion of the increase in general fund spending was due to a jump in state aid to technical colleges from $108.1 million to $511.1 million as lawmakers brought down technical colleges' levies. The Wisconsin Taxpayer Alliance notes that spending on technical college is now the state's 7th largest general fund program and a new source of pressure on the state budget. This is because if lawmakers want to hold those levies at the new lower level, they will have to repeat this investment in tech college aid each year going forwards. You know how that builds. This is the interesting part. While K-12 school aids remain the largest general fund program, representing $5.34 billion, a 34.8%, of general fund spending during the 14-15 fiscal year, growth in state spending on Medicaid puts it firmly in second place, representing $2.52 billion, or 16.4% of general fund spending. So they've got us and Medicaid, and together these two programs represent 51.2% of the general fund budget. Here's the clincher. For comparison purposes, in the last fiscal year prior to the recession, so that was 2007-8, state K-12 school aids also totaled $5.34 billion, which at that time represented 38.5% of the general fund budget, while Medicaid spending in that time was $1.68 billion, or 12.1%. So we went from 38.5% of the budget to 34.8%, and takes us back to what it takes us back to the 2007-8 spending level. I thought that was important for people to know. Yeah, you can, yeah, I can make copies, but you can get this right off of wasb.org. Okay? Yep.
Okay, done with the report?
I'm done.
Okay, good. No, interesting, thank you. Okay, so, yes. I thought
One more
you-
thing.
I thought you did, okay.
Yeah, one more thing I wanted to bring up was, I don't know where to put this, so the board has to help me. I did put together or find some things that we could put together a resolution talking about how we're not real happy with the Bill 481, Assembly Bill 481, Senate Bill 355 about limiting referendum. So I don't know where to put that in, you know.
So the board can look at this on an agenda setting. We can decide if we'll just put it out as a resolution.
And I gave you all a copy.
Yeah, so everyone has a copy. They can look it over. An agenda setting, we can decide whether just put it right on as a resolution.
Perfect.
Or a committee report first.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner
Can I ask a
Johnson?
question during the legislative report? Is there also sample resolutions regarding making the state superintendent a political appointee instead of?
Not yet, but you will have it as soon as I have it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. So everyone all the board members should look over that. Okay, consent resolution agenda. So on the consent resolution, board members have seen background material on this or the routine items. If a board member wants to discuss it or has an issue with something, they can pull it. Otherwise, we'll vote all of them with one vote. So I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of November 2nd, 2015. I would entertain a motion to approve the financial report of October 2015. I would entertain a motion to approve the gifts in the amount of $64,300.65 for the period of October 1st, 2015 through October 31st, 2015. I would entertain a motion to approve the Human Resources Employment Report. I would entertain a motion to approve the revisions to Policy 655.1 Activity Passes. I entertain a motion to approve the 2015-16 Student Transit Contract Amendment for Revenue Limit.
Pull that, please.
We'll have that pulled. Okay. So we have motions for the first five: the minutes, financial report, gifts, human resources, and activity passes policy. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion from Commissioner Johnson. We have a second from Commissioner Zong. Any comment? Any discussion? Okay, we'll need a roll call vote for this, please.
Commissioner Spindler,
Yes.
Commissioner Vu,
Yes.
Commissioner Zhang,
Yes.
Commissioner Duax,
Yes.
Commissioner Hombach-Boyle,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Luganville.
Yes.
Great, thank you. All right, so we had the Student Transit Contract Amendment for Revenue Limit pulled. Either you can put a motion to put it on the table, or we can just talk about it first.
So moved.
So we have a motion to have it on the table. Do I have a second to put it on the table?
Second.
We have a second. This.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're on. Sorry. Discussion, Commissioner Duax.
Well, we always seem to need to do this early before we've really settled into our financial picture. And I'd like to wait until we get some more information about referendum and where we are on that. And we also are facing a possible mandate for all-day Head Start. And I just think it's a little premature to approve it at this time.
Well, if, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Superintendent or Abby, this is something for our current contract. Because our current contract in the terms is that the transit company gets the amount based on a revenue limit. And so we basically have to approve what that amount is. So it's already in the contract. So it's not the new contract. Correct. And in the past, we have approved a new contract around the same time, but we have delayed it some so far. So does that clear up the question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Hambuck-Boyle.
And this contract with Student Transit is 2015 through June 30th, 2018?
Is that correct? Anything else? Okay. Again, I think I need to have a roll call vote on this, so we already have it on the table.
Commissioner Spindler,
Yes?
Commissioner Vu,
Yes.
Commissioner Jean,
Yes.
Commissioner Duax,
Yes.
Commissioner Humbuck-Boyle,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Luganville.
Yes.
Great, thank you, everybody. Okay, so we have two individually considered resolutions. The first is the payment of all bills in the amount of $6,429,037.80, and net payroll in the amount of $4,919,253.57 for the period October 1st through October 31st. So I'd entertain a motion to approve that payment.
So moved.
A motion for Commissioner Johnson. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Hambuck-Boyle. Are there any discussions or questions on this? Okay. Again, we'll need a roll call vote on this, and if you need to abstain, you may. Go ahead.
Commissioner Spindler,
Yes?
Commissioner Vu,
Yes.
Commissioner Jean,
Yes.
Commissioner Duax,
Yes.
Commissioner Humbuck-Boyle,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Luganville.
Yes.
Okay. Second on our individual resolutions is a resolution authorizing temporary borrowing in amount not to exceed $7 million pursuant to Section 67128A1 of Wisconsin statutes. Do I have a motion to approve that temporary
I
borrowing?
so move.
We have a motion from Commissioner Duax. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Luganville. Any discussion on that? Commissioner Johnson?
Well, I think the general public may not pay attention to this from year to year, and it is worth commenting that we must short-term borrow every year because our payments from the state and from property tax revenues don't come in until after we need them. And so we have to short-term borrow to pay our bills during that gap. You know, and oftentimes we get the question or comment, well, why doesn't the state just send you the money sooner? And of course, the answer to that is the state does what they want and doesn't always make sense. So we have to short-term borrow every year. I see the rate is creeping up just a little bit, but we're still borrowing at less than 1% interest just for several months. And so while we do have interest associated with that, we don't necessarily have a choice unless we were to build up our working capital more, which of course is very, very difficult to do when we don't have enough to keep the operation going at the rate we're going.
Excellent educational opportunity. Thank you. Quick question, Abby, for you. I mean, typically we use reserve for some of this kind of thing. I assume that was taken into account that we would need to borrow for this right now.
Yeah, we don't get our first big state aid payment until December 7th, and so this is the normal time that we borrow. We usually have 3 low points, usually end of November, February, and sometimes mid-June. And so our low point this year is actually not till June, but the way cash flow borrowing works, you have to borrow at your lowest point within 6 months. So this time, actually the end of this week is our low point in the next 6 months.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, something new I didn't know about. Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments? Questions? Oh, Commissioner McBoyle.
Were you going to say something? A little more education relative to our working capital, which dictates at times that if we're able to have the working capital that we do have, can give us an interest rate that is better. And so people need to know that there's a connection between what that working capital amount is that we use to pay our bills dictates what kind of a credit risk we are when we go out to borrow. And that's important to know that, because if we start to self-fund our needs, people in the community need to know the complication of what that is.
Great, thank you. Okay, I think we have the motion on the table already, so we'll do a roll call vote on that, please.
It's just pulling up here. Commissioner Spindler,
Yes.
Commissioner Vu,
Yes.
Commissioner Jean,
Yes.
Commissioner Duax,
Yes.
Commissioner Humbuck-Boyle,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Luganville.
Yes.
Great, thank you. All right, so that now we will adjourn to our committee as a whole, and we have a number of items, quite a few policy items on here to go through. But first, we have assessment tools for KeyWorks accountability, right? And I'm not sure we have a presentation. Go ahead.
So we have a presentation tonight, and while our new Director of Assessment's coming up, Michelle Radke, to get the PowerPoint ready, this is a follow-up to the work session that you had on accountability. And in that work session, you talked about the board's interest and obligation to monitor for student results and student accountability. And within the KeyWorks guidebook, there are 4 questions that are recommended for school boards to ask the superintendent and staff about accountability in preparation for doing due diligence in terms of monitoring student results. So Michelle has put together a PowerPoint tonight to give you a presentation that will hopefully answer those 4 questions for you, and I'm going to ask her to begin now.
Welcome, Michelle.
Hello. So I'm going to go through, well, this is looking a little goofy here. Ooh. James, would you have an idea?
So we may have to have a little technical adjustment.
Back on. So I'm going to start out, these are the questions that I am going to answer throughout this presentation, the questions that you should ask to superintendents and staff. And so the questions are, do you have an information system that provides adequate data for accountability? How do staff and students learn what is expected of them? How is success or failure assessed? What are the system's rewards and consequences for success and failure? And how do student achievement results factor into staff evaluations? The first question that I'm going to start with is the very first one. Does the Eau Claire Area School District have an information system that provides adequate data for accountability? There are 4 types of data that we work with in education, and I'm going to start out with the very first one, and that's achievement data. And I'm here to tell you that yes, we do have systems in place to report out our achievement data. And achievement data being our test scores, our grades, our graduation rates, and there's a lot that it encompasses within there. But the systems that we do have in place are, we have Skyward,
which is our student information system. And in our student information system, we have the test scores, the grades that teachers input. We also have, we upload our WSAS data, our Wisconsin Student Assessment System data, which is WKCE, Badger, and next year will be Forward Exam. We upload our ACT scores, we upload our Aspire scores into there. So we have other data that also comes into Skyward. We also have a local data warehouse called Decision Ed. And Decision Ed, the great thing about that is we have all of our statewide assessment data. We also have Skyward that feeds into the data warehouse. And we also upload our interim assessment data, such as the STAR assessment, which is a screener, PALS assessment, which is a screener, Ames Web, which is a screener also. And what's nice about Decision Ed is we can have our local data put in there, and we also can create reports for our staff that revolve around their goals that they have set in place. And so we make those reports to what the needs are of the Eau Claire Area School District. Then we have the system of WiseDash, and WiseDash is the state data warehouse. It can do similar things to Decision Ed, but what it can't do is it cannot make reports that are specific to us. So we only can use the reports that they have in place. So they have statewide data that is put into WiseDash, and at this point in time, they can't put the local data in either. So they can't put in our screeners that we use. And then the fourth one that we have is Forecast 5. And Forecast 5, the great thing about that system is we can take our achievement data and we can compare it to schools of the same size as us. We can compare it to schools that have same demographics and see how do we compare against them with our achievement data. Yeah. It's, do you know, Jim? Wisconsin system. Yeah.
Does Forecast 5 go global?
First of all, WiseDash is Wisconsin Information System for Education, and Forecast 5, I'm not sure if it's bigger than, is that national? National.
That is, yep.
Yes. Mr. Hambuck-Boyle.
Quick question. When you look at the information systems, and that's achievement, never mind. I'm going to hold my question.
That's okay. Our second type of data that we have in education is perception data, and that's how people feel about being a part of an educational institution, how they see it. And so we do have systems in place for perception data. One of the systems that we use is K-12 Insight Surveys, and you have seen many of those survey results in board meetings in the past. And so just a few of them are our student engagement survey, our family climate survey, our staff engagement survey, educator effectiveness, a calendar survey. We even take it down to the student level with K-12 Insight, and we have a senior exit survey. What was their experience in the Eau Claire Area School District? And we also have had AP survey to determine why students do or do not take AP courses. In the district, we also have had focus groups that have been at the staff, the student, the community level to find out what are the needs of our district. We have had feedback loops where we have worked with larger groups in the community, with the faculty, and that we take things like a strategic plan, we have them react to that, and then we bring back the feedback to the board. And then we also look for trends in in the BIC minutes and in Meet and Confer to see if there are any trends in there. A third type of data that we use in education is programmatical data, and that provides information on the educational environment, programs, and vision. We do have systems in place for program data also. And so if we look at the early childhood area, they have ECHRS that they report on. And ECHRS is Early Childhood Environmental Rating Scale. So they have a rating system that they use that they are able to pull information from there. We also, for program data, we have data in Skyward. And so we are able to pull enrollment data of programs that we offer in the Eau Claire Area School District, and we are able to get some numbers through that. Like I said in the last slide, we do use K-12 insight surveys also for program data. And one that I referred to was our AP survey to really understand, you know, what is the involvement in AP, who's taking that. We disaggregate that data to, you know, what types of students are taking those kind of courses. We also have SIR data, which is a school-wide implementation review of our response to intervention. We can pull data out of there. We have done a in the opening of schools reports, we look at a trends analysis of participation rates. Those participation rates come from all of those systems that I have mentioned above. And then overall trends and results of achievement data that are connected to programs we also look at. And then the fourth type of data is demographics data, and that's who the educational system serves, who works there, what subgroups are represented. And again, we do have systems in place that we are able to report demographic data. In Skyward, our student information system, we have all of the demographics on our students in that system that we are able to disaggregate that data. In WiseDash, you can take it down. There's WiseDash Public, which any of us can get to, but there's also WiseDash Secure, and you have to have a WAMS account to get into WiseDash Secure. And that secure account is where we can get down to the student level, and there's demographic data in that at the student level. We also have a system, Business Plus, and Business Plus is where we house our staff data. So we can get demographic data about our staff out of Business Plus. And then Decision Ed, Decision Ed is a place where it brings it all together. So we do have staff demographic data, and we have student demographic data within Decision Ed in our data warehouse. So for the first question, we do have systems in place for accountability.
Just if I could ask a quick question.
Mr. Luginbill, go ahead.
Do the BIC committees receive the staff engagement data broken down for just their school?
No, we don't, because the cell size is too small, and so staff could be exposed from by, you know, like if you have, because you have a smaller number of respondents, individual responses might actually stick out, so we are not provided site level reports.
Do they get it broken down by secondary, elementary?
No, it's just kept as one large. Because if they were to break it down by secondary and you had one building that was skewing the data, you wouldn't know whether or not that was your building that was impacting it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So in that, it's kind of like when we receive our report card, if our cell size is too small, they just put an asterisk there. And so it would be the same kind of thing.
Commissioner Duax.
I'm assuming that all of this is extremely well protected. Can you comment on that?
Yes. Yes, it's secure data. Mm-hmm.
Michelle, when you talked about the information systems, the perception data, the program data, the demographic data, in our goal that talks about educating the whole child using multiple measures, and that we were pretty adamant about the social and emotional growth and characteristics, where is that the perception data, or where does that fall?
Behavioral data would be a part of that also, which is we have a PBIS system that we can pull data from. Our Swiss system does that.
So does that measure the soft skills, the employability skills, and those pieces that come up all the time as part of really teaching the whole child?
Yes, that is part of it. Okay, the second question, how do staff and students learn what is expected of them? So how does staff know what is expected of them? When you become a teacher, you have state standards, and those in every subject area you have standards that you teach with, and there are English language arts and math Common Core standards. So every subject area has standards. Then we also, if we get into courses such as advanced placement, our AP courses, they have advanced placement curricula that they have to follow also. We also have courses like Project Lead the Way. Those also have curricula that we have to follow. So those are documents that are given and communicated with the staff that are teaching those. And then we take it down to local curriculum documents. We have local curriculum documents which have the state standards in them, but then it also takes it down to the learning targets. So what do we need students to know? So all of those, that will be included in those documents. We also communicate to the staff what they need to know through our school improvement plans. So each school, they had to create 4 goals this year for their building school improvement plans, and those included a math, a literacy, an engagement, and a school-specific goal. How those goals were communicated with staff, principals worked with their staff to develop those goals and then the action plan steps. Those goals and action plans were then discussed with their staff at the end of August. And then their student learning objectives from the teacher end and school learning objectives from the principal end are reflective of the building goals that they have set in place. The primary way that we communicate both the expectations of the staff and of the students is through professional learning communities. We have done a lot of work around professional learning communities, and some of the key areas with professional learning communities is the first thing is to ensure that students learn. So going around to force questions, what is it we expect our students to learn? How will we know when each student has learned it? How will we respond when a student experiences difficulty in learning? How will we respond when a student already knows it? So that's the first area of a professional learning community. The second area is to really create a culture of collaboration. So collaborating for school improvement and removing those barriers for success, or barriers to success. And I'm going to go through an activity that we did with staff, that we did with principals, and then those principals turned it around, and they also did it with staff to figure out where are they at in their culture of collaboration. So I'll go through that in the next slide. And then the other one is if we want to keep achieving at high standards, one of the things that we have to do is to keep a focus on results. So the activity that we did is to see where we are at for a culture of collaboration is to do the 7 stages of collaboration. Where are you at? So with staff, we worked with principals, and principals then worked with their staff. Where are you at within this these stages? And then what we did is it's not just where are you at, but how can I get to that next stage for collaboration? Because once we do this, we're able to achieve a lot more. So are you at stage 1 where you're just filling the time, all the way down to 4, developing common assessments, down to 7 where you're reflecting on the instruction that's actually happening in the classroom? So how do we get students to know what we expect of them? And that's learning targets in student-friendly language. So students, they need to know, what will I be able to do when I finish a lesson? What idea, topic, or subject is important to that student to learn and understand so that they can do what's expected of them? And how will they show that they have learned? So we have been working really hard in the school district to develop learning targets in student-friendly language. And so some of you may have heard of I can statements. I'm going to show you some examples of some I can statements from pre-K all the way up to high school. So in pre-K, they have an example in their language development communication. You see that it says I can have a conversation with others. So as a student, I can use new words. I can ask and answer questions. I can use pictures to tell a story. I can name most letters and some letter sounds. And so early childhood, they have goals at the end of by the end of the 4K experience. They want students to be able to identify 20 uppercase letters, 16 lowercase letters, 9 letter sounds. And so through these I can statements, students understand what they are supposed to be able to do. If I was a 2nd grade student, these are some I can statements that I would see, and these you would see hanging up on boards in the classroom. I can describe and draw squares, rectangles, pentagons, and hexagons. I can measure line segments. I can recognize, draw, and identify 2D and 3D shapes. So they're being communicated to the students what they are expected to know when they walk out of that classroom. An 8th grade student, I can add and subtract 2 numbers written in scientific notation. I can multiply and divide 2 numbers written in scientific notation. So those are some examples of 8th grade students.
And so we're in all subject areas. If I go, we even have psychology. So all subject areas have been working on I can statements. I can define psychology as a scientific study of behavioral and mental processes to I can compare and contrast the current perspectives in psychology. So we have them in most of our subject areas in student-friendly language. So the next question is, how is success or failure assessed? So different levels we assess in different ways, but students, when students are gauging their learning, they are using their formative, interim, and summative assessments and grades to determine if they have been successful or not in the classroom. And so them, in a formative assessment, it could be a pre-test, it could be a quick quiz that was given, it could be a self-assessment that they do on themselves. The hope is that when they have these formative assessments, it's building them up to that they know that once they take that interim assessment, they know they're going to be successful. So when the interim assessment comes and it's a post-test or a universal screener or a graded classwork, they're pretty confident that they've done well on those formative assessments now that they'll be successful in interim. And then when they're being successful on their interim assessments, then they're pretty confident that those summative assessments, such as AP exams, end of unit exams, big stake tests like our WKCE, Badger, that they'll be successful in those.
Okay, Michelle, but not all summative assessments are standardized.
Nope, nope.
So I
So
want people to know that,
be,
yeah.
exactly. So it
Yeah.
could be an end of a unit test as a summative assessment. Yes, very good point. Teachers and parents, they use test scores and grades to gauge a student's academic strengths and areas for future growth. Communities, they rely on test scores as an indicator of the quality of their educational system. So we have parents that they move into or families that they're moving into the Eau Claire area. They look at report cards to see what schools are exceeding expectation, which ones are meeting expectations, which ones are not meeting expectations. They look at average ACT scores. How are schools performing on the ACT? And they're picking houses based on those things. They're also, if we look at current families, they look at, are their students engaged in school? Are they having good experiences? Are they participating in activities within the school day, out of the school day? So they're gauging, by their student how the quality of their educational system. And then we have state and federal lawmakers. They use test scores to determine whether public schools are performing to an acceptable level. So if we're not performing at an acceptable level, we could be put on a plan of improvement, be identified as a focus school. What does that mean for us? So putting us on that plan to make sure that we grow as a school with our staff and our students. So I'm going to give you an example of identifying successes or failures within our school system. So this is a school improvement goal this year, and this is SOUS. 75% of students will attain a student growth percentile. So how much will they want the students to grow, have a student growth percentile of 35 or higher by the May STAR assessment. So STAR assessment being a screener. And then the action plan item, they're going to conduct a needs analysis for reading intervention. And so what does that look like? What does their needs analysis look like? And I'm going to show you that in a minute. So these data are tracked through the data warehouse, the systems that I showed you a little bit ago, and then we also supplement it with Skyward data. So an example, this is small, but I'll explain through it here. Each line right here is a student, an example of a student, and in here are different types of data. So the data warehouse pulled this. You just click a button and it automatically generates this report. And it has attendance, it has their STAR scores, it has the WKCE or the Badger, and then it has their grade marks. And then what it does is it color codes them. Are they above benchmark, are they at benchmark, or are they below benchmark? And so then we're able to track, okay, if a student is showing a lot of red, do we need interventions on those students, and what would those interventions be? So by using the data, we're able to track that a lot closer. And the next question. What are the system's rewards and consequences for success and failure? So students who succeed, they have greater access to opportunities in the future. We have many students who have been successful in the Eau Claire Area School District, and they move back here, they stay here, and they're willing to continue raising a family right here in Eau Claire. So we know that we have good schools. Students who meet key indicators such as the 3rd grade reading score, the 8th grade math score, our ACT, are on track for graduation from high school. Another reward. Staff evaluations are linked to accountability measures. So when we talk about accountability measures, we really want to look at the growth model. We want to grow our educators. It's not about exiting them out of our system, but if they don't meet their SLOs, what does that look like? How can we help them? How can we help them grow? Because by making them grow, we're going to also help our students grow. And so we want to help our staff. Staff use student achievement data to make decisions and to set instructional priorities, just like I showed you on the prior slide. And our budget reflects student successes and failures. We should be able to look at money that we spent and see that achievement has increased. We should be able to look and say, you know what, we need to put more money in this area. There's not much money going into that area, and we need to increase our achievement in that area. And also students who fail, they may require interventions. And so what does that look like? And so I'm going to show you a system that we have adopted in the Eau Claire Area School District that helps us with those interventions. So we have a multi-level systems of support, and this will be in the PowerPoint and I'll give you the gist of it. But over on the left-hand side, these are all of our essential items. So these are the data that we want to look at. And you'll see in here there is data roll-throughs, there's data sharing, there's grade level collaboration. Then we talk about our universal instruction. What is our universal instruction? Are all students succeeding in that universal instruction? If not, we may need to look at those students who aren't succeeding and they go to selective. And when we go to selective, we start needing more resources for those students to be able to intervene with them. And those students that are still not successful at that selective level, then they go into an intensive intervention where we need more supports yet, such as that's when a school psychologist, a school social worker start entering within the system. So we have systems in place for those interventions for those students that aren't on track. So I'm going to give you another example of how data is used as for success in our system. So North High School school improvement goal for the last couple of years has been surrounded around advanced placement. Their goal this year is to increase 7 percentage points from 33% to 40% of students enrolled in one or more advanced placement courses for 2016-17. In our AP surveys that we have taken, so that perception data that I talked about before, we found out that the kids, we're not targeting, we're only targeting one type of child. And so we wanted to look at different, like how can we give all kids access to these advanced placement courses. And so just a couple weeks ago, they had a night where they brought in, identified some families that they thought the students would be very advantageous to take an advanced placement course. And they brought in those families to communicate what does it mean to take an advanced placement course. And why would you take that advanced placement course? And so that's where the collaboration between the Gifted and Talented and English Learners Program, they met together, they collaborated to increase the number of underrepresented students taking advanced placement courses. And very good turnout that happened. So from this, we have a little chart here. And if you look right here in the blue, this right here is the sum of students who initially enrolled in AP courses over the years. So then the second one is the sum of the number who finished the course. Okay, so they persisted through it. The one thing I want you to look at right here is in the 2014-15 school year, we almost had the same amount of kids who initially enrolled that finished the course. That was a success compared to all the other years. So we made a big gains there. The gray line right here is the sum of exam takers. If you notice, since 2010-11, we almost have a steady increase in that. So we have a lot more taking the exam, but the huge thing I think there is our increase is still happening of students who have passed the exam. So that's an external verification of the work that is happening in the classroom, that we're preparing students for this exam. And then the last question, how do student achievement results factor into staff evaluations? So when we talk about educator effectiveness, they have to go through a process, and they use data within that process. So teachers, they must first review student data to identify an area or areas of need. They then set their goal based on that data. The teachers monitor the progress throughout the year. And then at the end of the year, they review their goal status with their supervisor, and they use those results to inform future areas of growth for that instructor. And so using it as a growth model for our teachers within our school district. So in summary, around these questions, the Eau Claire Area School District has data systems in place which continue to develop. The roadmap for what is expected of staff and students has become clearer through the use of school improvement goals, action plan items, professional learning communities, and learning targets. From the student to the district level, the Eau Claire Area School District has the tools in place to measure the success of our school system towards continuous improvement, and student achievement results are used in discussion with principals and staff to help both students and staff grow.
Great, thank you. So questions from the board. Commissioner John.
More of a request. I wasn't able to take notes as fast as I can with one finger. Can we get this on board doc as soon as possible? Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson.
Thanks, Michelle. I appreciate that you used the keywords to outline your report, and you have been at this job not very long, so I'm very glad that you are thoroughly immersed in it and clearly have a good handle on the assessments that are occurring. So I'm sure it's a little daunting to, with like a month after starting a new job, to come to the board and tell us everything there is to know about assessments. So thanks for all that great information. So I think Commissioner Hambach-Boyle probably has already kind of given a little clue into kind of one of the big questions the board had in our work session. And I would guess I would just ask you or Superintendent Hardebecker, what other administrators can answer this question. So the board's #1 goal is to educate the whole child using multiple measures to assess academic achievement and social emotional growth that are characteristic of successful adults. It's clear to me that we're using lots of measures to measure academic achievement, and that it clearly is embedded into the culture of our district and this institution, that we're constantly looking at new data, better data, ways to shake the data out, and different ways to test kids. And I see my own son in Skyward and his learning objectives in his classes, and we have lots and lots of information about that. But what I'm less clear about is if we have standards for social emotional growth or characteristics of kids. I think that with the PBIS, it sounds like we have standards for behavior, and certainly that tells us a lot about some characteristics like self-control and those sorts of things. But what I'm less clear about is if we have standards and or measures beyond preschool of the characteristics, the social emotional characteristics of kids. So that's what I would like to hear about, what we have and what we're doing.
So the June 11th board meeting, if you go to the board docs, it has the report from the Student Engagement Survey, and that survey was designed specifically around the board's goals about the whole child and the social emotional learning. And in there's an overall engagement scoring mechanism, and it's also broken down by cognitive and social emotional engagement. And then there are drivers beneath each of those that you can review as well. So that's back from June 1. So you'll find that in the board docs report.
So we have the students reporting their own engagement.
Yep.
Okay, so what I guess I want to know is, do we have standards for, and then the staff, the professionals evaluating our social emotional growth?
About 5 years ago, we did develop local standards, and it likely, those will be revisited in probably in the next year. But there was a set of standards and a committee that came together to develop those. No, but we can get a copy for you.
Sounds good. Commissioner Hambuck-Boyle.
Yeah, and I just wanted to bring this up too as a thought process, even since we put our the social emotional emphasis, as research goes down the road as well. Social is different than emotional, and I think we should start referring to it as social and emotional development, because truly you can delineate both. And that didn't really hit me in the head till I was somewhere and we were having this discussion and looked at the research. So I just want to throw that out there.
I'm personally interested in other kinds of assessments, projects, project learning, real world learning, hands-on, and it is still a lot of testing, and I know that's easier and and that's what we got. But I would like to see more of that, because that combines a lot of the multiple measures in one in many ways, an integrated learning environment. So I would be interested in that, in us trying to work more towards that than just tests at the end of this, some of the test or the AP test or whatever. So, Commissioner, I'm sorry,
Yeah. So one of the things I would say is that I think we have some of those things in place, but perhaps they're not reported to you in the same way. You saw a little bit of that in North Star's presentation with some of the things that they had made in projects. You'll see that on National History Day when people put together when the students put together their National History Day projects. I think in the arts, you see their performances. So I think there are opportunities for students to demonstrate what they've learned in different ways, but it doesn't get reported out in as formal a way as we do with the standardized testing or the grade point averages or the data points that we have. And so we probably as a district need to think about how we can perhaps provide more evidence that that's happening in the school district for you.
Yeah, I'm thinking more of a systemic way of seeing that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of kids who actually don't do well on tests for whatever reasons, but they do really well on projects or hands-on learning or whatever.
Exactly.
And if we could do a systemic measure of that, that would be another way of demonstrating to not only us, but to our parents and to our taxpayers that they are learning in many other ways that I think would be important. So if we could get some kind of systemic measure of that and have it part of our culture, I think, our learning culture for that. So that was my thought watching it.
And I think that's a very good point and something that we need to look at in terms of research and how other districts are doing this. I think this is something where a lot of districts struggle because the emphasis has been on standardized testing, and we want to show different ways.
Right. Exactly. Commissioner Hambuck-Boyle.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment too, early on there are ways that you can positively measure protective factors in kiddos, which they've been doing, at the preschool level for quite a while. And so I would really like, as a board member, to have the board learn more about that and what that looks like. Because that might be a bigger conversation, and we might be somewhat cutting edge for that conversation.
Commissioner Luginbill.
Kind of circling back to what I brought up earlier about the staff engagement data. I know in terms of exposing people, we have all of those considerations. Are there ways to break that down with a more thematic approach to provide that breakdown by school or by level?
Not by school or level, and especially for thematic, now you're talking about individual responses, and so typically you'll get less individual responses than the actual number of participants, like the verbatims where students, or where the participants will actually write out, the open-ended question that you have at the end. So if you have a group of 100 people taking a survey, typically far less will actually fill out some of the responses that you would develop a theme analysis on.
Okay.
It is, and so you take that and compare that to the student engagement survey. Our student bodies are so much larger. Our smallest building is in the upper 200s. Our largest is 1700. So it's you can definitely do that type of analysis, but because our teaching staff per building is typically smaller, it's a bigger struggle.
Yeah, it's just frustrating me because I feel like we have a really great thing here, but at the same time, I think with the data being 30,000 feet up district-wide, it will paint a picture for us, but I just think about the third grade elementary school teacher at Northwoods or the secondary principal or the BIC committees, and how is this doing a lot of good for them when they can't see?
Well, but part of that also is the follow-up. So it'll probably be late January, early February. We haven't finalized the date, but that's when the follow-up focus groups will happen with the staff. So right now we're bringing staff next month in each building. We'll be going through a review of the overall district survey, and from that they'll identify the key points that should be dug into deeper in when K-12 Insight comes to do the focus groups in late January or early February. So some of those pieces that you're thinking about come out through that process, and we get cross-representation in those focus groups from across the district, different job responsibilities. So we get a good mix of people that have been part of it, and they served us very well the last time we did that 2 years ago.
Anything else? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Good start. Yeah. Okay, next we have the Wisconsin State Civics Test graduation requirement, something that has been another thing imposed on us by the state that we need to learn about, take care of. So, Jim, do you have something on this? Okay.
All right, good evening. So this evening we're going to talk about part of Act 55.
Jim, I forgot one thing. Was there any public comment on the last thing? I forgot. Not a lot from the public here. Oh, go ahead, Jim. Sorry.
No problem. Part of Act 55 required the inclusion of a new graduation requirement, the civics exam. And so joining me tonight to help explain the implementation of this expectation are the two chairs from the social studies departments at North and Memorial High School. From North High School, Carrie Carlson, and from Memorial High School, Emily McCorney. And they're going to help, along with me, walk you through the expectation and how it's being implemented. And also I know that some of the things that came out were about cost to the district, that there's some concerns about a mandate, and how we're trying to build this right into the teaching day and what we're doing, our regular practices, even though it is an additional requirement. I will say that before I hand over, and I think Carrie's going to start, these two I posed the question in August. I said, we have this in front of us. Can we develop a solution? And they just took off, and they really worked well with their principals and their departments, and their leadership is the reason why we're not getting a lot of pitchforks and hand grenades, as I like to refer to it. They're making this happen at the two buildings, so I'm really proud to be working with them tonight. So Carrie's going to start us off and walk us through some history, and then Emily's going to pick up the pieces after she gets through that first stage.
Okay, I'm not sure how much you know and don't know as far as how this got started, but in the 2015-2017 biennium budget, they put in, instead of having a standalone bill, they put it in the budget to say, hey, all students or all schools who receive public funds, so that would be voucher schools also, if they want their students to graduate, those students have to pass the naturalization test. They did hold public hearings. Let me go to this one. Why the Joe Foss Institute, who really started then the Civics Education Initiative, so they're two separate things, but really they're not. They lobby state governments around the country, and so they started in 2014 in order to increase basically civic knowledge, they said, and their goal is by 2017 have all 50 states pass this, and so right now they're at 9. So 9 states have this test. So this is the representative, actually not too far from us. So he's in the 87th district. So Hayward to Medford is kind of drawn it's kind of a funky drawing as far as his district. It's not straight lines. But he did propose it. And so they did hold some hearings on it, so some public hearings. And so in the public hearings, the biggest concern for schools was that it was supposed to be administered exactly like the naturalization test, which is a verbal test. And so schools are like, hold on, you want us to take that much time out to verbally ask all of these questions? And so by the end of the hearings, it came out that we could have multiple choice tests. And so the content has to be exactly the same. So then the question, of course, is, do the questions have to be exactly the same? And what they are almost exactly the same, but in order to make the multiple choice, you do have to change some of them a little bit, otherwise it's kind of impossible. Who must take it? So everybody must take it. Every student that wants to graduate has to take it. Those that have IEPs do have to take it, but they do not have to pass it. Everybody else who does not have an IEP has to get a 60 out of 100. So literally a 60%, which in our district is like a D-. So if you get that, then you, yep. You can retake the test as many times as you need. So the school we'll talk about where we implement it in Northern Memorial and how we're doing that, but basically you can take it until you pass it. It's up to the district. So DPI does not, they're not making the test. They don't administer the test. They don't really check or gather or any of that. And so really it's completely up to each district. The naturalization test is really already written, and so that part really isn't that difficult. The big thing is that we need to find time to write it, to give it, and then to make sure that it's in our grades, so that it's recorded that the students did pass it. And that needs to also then be put on their transcripts. And Emily's going to take some questions.
Could I ask a quick question about that?
Yeah.
Can you set it up online so they can all go into the library and take it online? And then you can,
that isn't, somebody actually brought that up today because I was talking with my
even
students
internal network, but
I would assume that would be fine. We'd probably have to get it checked out, but as long as it's not something that it's take home, that we're there making sure that they're not using their notes, that they're taking the test.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, there was a lot of conversation about what should the test look like with people at the DPI there for support, and they basically just said it's up to the district to decide what the test is going to look like. So we got together at the beginning of the school year and just said a multiple choice would be the easiest kind of route to take. I say easiest, kind of grimacing because I don't like the idea of an easy test, but as the conversation kind of goes on in terms of the meaningfulness of all of it, it's not something that we necessarily want to spend a ton of class time on. So here are a couple of sample questions, and I'll kind of walk through a couple. What is the supreme law of the land? You'd be looking there for the Constitution. And again, we've formatted it between North and Memorial as a multiple choice test. That would obviously be one of the options. Another question, what does the Constitution do? You could have multiple responses there, and again, on a multiple choice test, you might have all of the above or something like that so that they could select the correct answer. So some of the questions have value behind them, but in my personal opinion, not all of them do. Because it's like, what was Ben Franklin most famous for? And stuff like that is not quite the rigor that we would expect at our level, but regardless. A couple other ones that are solid content that we cover in our civics courses already. Under the Constitution, some powers belong to the federal government. What is one power of the federal government? So they'd have to be able to identify that. Likewise with the state government, being able to identify powers that are traditionally state government powers. And Carrie and I both have example tests that we'll give to each of you so you can kind of look over what some of them are.
so I can see if I get 60%.
Yeah, you can see if you can pass it. The thing that's nice is there are a lot of online resources and study tools for students who might struggle with it. In a quick look over the 100 question test, 57 or so are directly related to what we cover already in a civics course. The other 43 tend to be early American history, which students will have gotten at some point, but it's just in a civics course we tend to focus more on the government side, not the Ben Franklin and Susan B. Anthony and those kinds of things. So where is the Statue of Liberty located and those kinds of things. So I don't want to speak for everyone in our social studies departments, but personally, as somebody who teaches civics, I'm not changing my curriculum greatly to address this test because it would quite honestly dumb down the curriculum. But we're taking steps to make sure that our students are successful. So a couple of things, I'll speak to Memorial and then Carrie can speak to North. All civics teachers at Memorial first semester have already administered at least one version of the citizenship exam. Between the data I have for myself and a couple of my colleagues, at the first go round, we had 93% of our students score a 60% or higher already, which is great. And obviously we would project that to go up. Of the students who had not passed, an overwhelming majority of them were students on an IEP or English language learners. So we'll continue to work a little bit with those students to kind of coach them up to where they need to be. And then I believe anybody who doesn't pass during the semester with us will then work with their counselors to make sure that they do meet that requirement. I don't know if you want to speak to the north side.
North basically did the same thing, and they had 92% pass on the first time. So the second time they're going to have them take the test is next week, actually, and then one more time at the end. Just to kind of give you an idea, too, as far as this test, my 6-year-old can get 10 out of 100 right now. So now, granted, not many people, talk as much about the Constitution with my 6-year-old, but it didn't take her very long to remember a lot of these things. And so, really, if there are that handful of students that don't know them, I think it would be easy to have accommodations and to try to get them to that point. I don't think it's going to be detrimental to our graduation rates whatsoever.
So, if I could.
Commissioner Luginbill.
Just as a concerned average Joe here, will the esteemed Joe Foss Institute be sending us a check to help pay for these new tests, or the staff time, for the record?
Yeah, so there's, other than photocopying exams, there isn't any external cost.
Okay.
It is staff time. So it took our staff time to figure out how we're going to administer it. We still are working, actually. We have to, and that's actually one of the pieces on the last slide. We do have to keep a record in Skyward. Unfortunately, because every district in the state has to do this, we've been working with Skyward to make sure that there is the most elegant solution, so it can be, because what will happen is a counselor will sit in front of a monitor and pull up the student's graduation requirement, and this is like this new add-on, and they haven't programmed this into one of their fields. We have a solution that can work, but it's just a little bit cumbersome. So we're trying to, on the back end, spend staff time, so it's not a purchase service, but it's our time just trying to make this work on the back end, because we don't want a student to fall through the cracks. We also have to be concerned about students that move in, that may be coming from another district. But if you think of the requirement is for graduates for next year. We started this year because civics, students either take as a junior civics or AP US government. So in either one of those courses that they take, they'll have this experience. Now in the AP course, we'll do this in May after the AP test is over. This won't be done before. But they're building this into at the junior level, which is good that they're taking this to junior level, because if like I said, students move in or out, or someone isn't passing, we still have a year to get things cleaned up. So we're not going to be in late May after the AP test trying to rush the last kids through to make sure that they can graduate. We've got a little time on our hands, which helps. So that's what was really great about this crew, is that they recognized if we jump on this right now, we could be way ahead of it, and they were, and they did so. And you can tell already we've got a lot of this already taken care of. One last thing though is the group they talked about, civics and AP US government are both semester courses. So about half of our kids have gone through it, and the other half will be coming through next semester.
Commissioner Hamburg-Boyle.
I want to thank you for your proactiveness on this. I mean, really, I can't thank you enough. But as a board member, is there any way to put a cost on this? Because I would like that as a board member.
It would be just to survey people about how long they spent on it, and then to quantify their time.
I mean, would that be hard to do? I don't want to put any more time and effort into this. I really can't even ethically think about that. But
it is something we could do.
Is it?
Yeah, and it's still, by the way, like I said, ongoing. We're still tweaking the Skyward end of things.
Yeah.
So we do have one of our Skyward expert is still working with the 2 registrars, and they've been great about it too. And again, like you said, it's taking time, but just like we saw last year with the Badger exam, our people got confronted with this problem. They recognized it for what it was. but then they just realized it was a problem to solve,
Well,
and they've done a wonderful job.
I hope I'm conveying
Oh,
our
yes, yes, you
gratitude,
are.
really.
Yeah.
I mean, from the
Mhm.
bottom of my heart. But I really would like to have a ballpark on what this costs our district.
In terms of time, even time.
Time, yep. Or, you know, if they do a paper copy, we have to paper, I mean, what that would cost, because we look at every penny.
I would say the other cost too is instructional time. So right now, I know Chris is taking 2 separate days to do this.
Well,
and that's- yeah.
can you, and yeah, I would just really like to have that, thanks.
Yeah, in a semester class.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could try to quantify that.
Commissioner Jung.
A little bit of estimation involved.
Oh,
I hate to ask that, because you've already put too much time in on it, but I just think it's important to have that amount with our community and for conversation. Thanks.
Well, this is pretty much set, so could we take this as an opportunity to work with our community, especially the immigrant community, the refugee community that's coming in, because they're the ones who's going to be needing this, and they typically don't show up in our schools, the parents anyways. So could we use this as a way to at least get their trust into our schools, collaborate with the community?
One of the, what's kind of nice about this test too is they did say that it can be given in different languages. And so that, and it, you know, it can, as long as it's the same, it can be given verbally. And so if the reading is a little bit more of a problem, then we can give it verbally and do the same thing.
Oh no, that's fine. I'm just trying to. What I'm saying is, I want to attract more people into our schools so they can, one, look at the condition of our schools, and two, we'll get just more people participating in our in their students in their kids' education.
Yeah, I wanted to make that point that you were thinking about parents. They might be interested in, this might attract them to come in to the schools in some way. Yes. Other comments, questions? Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for all the work.
Thank you very much. I would like to say before these two walk away, I threw this problem out there. I asked them to do this, and all of a sudden I got an email from Carrie on either a Friday or Saturday night about 10. I said, I'll start a PowerPoint, and they just did this on their own. So they're a couple of very dedicated people here.
All right, thank you. Yes. Any comments from the public? Okay. Okay, so now we have a whole bunch of readings of policies. So our first policy is Policy 460, Student Scholarships and Awards. I don't know if I have anything from P&G on this, any comments on this. If you pull it up, we've got a number of yellow additions to it. So. Okay, there we go. It's up there now. I think this had come to us before, correct? Right. So, any comments now or changes or suggestions? Commissioner Luganville.
We have that gift policy next, and that clears up the concerns you brought up. So.
Okay. All right. Let's see if we can get a volunteer for the reading, the first reading for this then. Commissioner Duex? Great. Thank you.
Student Scholarships and Awards, 460. Students in the district shall be informed annually of any available scholarships and awards. Literature concerning available scholarships and awards shall be available through the guidance office, posted in the appropriate school building and online. The district will select nominees and alternates for the Wisconsin Academic Excellence Higher Education Scholarship and the Wisconsin Technical Excellence Higher Education Scholarship in accordance with established procedures for those awards. The district shall not unlawfully discriminate in the acceptance of administration of awards, gifts, scholarships, or other aids, benefits, or services to students, including those from private agencies, organizations, or persons on the basis of sex, race, national origin, ancestry, creed, color, handicap, pregnancy, marital or parental status, sexual orientation, gender identity or gender expression, or physical, mental, emotional, or learning disability. Discrimination complaints shall be processed in accordance with established procedures. Accordingly, any scholarship or award granted by, administered by, or advertised/promoted by the district shall be in compliance with the above stated policy of non-discrimination.
Great, thank you. Just one correction, gifts is not in that. So, but thank you, Commissioner Duax. All right, so we have our first reading. Everyone ready for it to go next time? Okay. Okay. Yay. All right, we'll move that one forward. Okay, great. So our next one is gifts. Gifts to the Eau Claire Public School District, policy 840. Any comments about that one? It looks like what was added was a paragraph at the end, basically. Is that correct?
And we added
about
school district.
at the top, right? And to align the way they're worded. Yeah. Okay. I don't know if we can pull that up. Yeah. It's slow there. Okay. There we go. Great. Any comments, questions about this one? Does this fix it? It's basically a discrimination section. Okay. Volunteer, or I'm willing to volunteer. If not, I'll take it. Okay. I took the short one. Gifts to the Eau Claire Area School District 840. The board may accept and use or reject all or part of a gift of money or property for a purpose deemed by the board to be consistent with the mission, values, and goals of the district. All gifts shall become the sole property of the district to be used at the discretion of the board unless otherwise specified in the gift. The district shall not unlawfully discriminate in the acceptance or administration of gifts, bequests, benefits, or services to students, including those from private agencies, organizations, or persons, on the basis of sex, race, national origin, ancestry, creed, color, handicap, pregnancy, marital or parental status, sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression, or physical, mental, emotional, or learning disability. Discrimination complaints shall be processed in accordance with established procedures. Okay. Board is ready to move that one forward? Yes. Okay. Great. Moving fast. Next we have policy 154, board self-evaluation. This one had come to us last time. We'll see if we can pull that up. In the meantime, I did have a question about this one. I'm sorry for the P&G, but when it comes up I can mention it. Well, I can mention it now. In the proposal you have the bullets about how the board would evaluate itself, the bullet points in it. And I'm wondering, I looked at policy 150, which tells us what the board responsibilities and duties are, keyboard charge, and it seems like that should align with that. You see what I'm saying? Did you look at policy 150? Are they different, or?
We didn't because it's not cross-referenced at the bottom. We should take it back and do that.
Yeah, because it would seem to me that the things that we are evaluating ourselves on should be aligned with our charge and our responsibilities on that policy. It says board, I can read part of it. Board responsibilities and duties. The Board of Education is an entity entrusted to the public to govern and lead, and it talks a little bit about that. And then it has a keyboard chart, our keyboard charge, which it sets, like set the vision and mission statement for the district, set standards and expected student achievement, develop and improve district goals, and so forth. And that's what's in the policy.
What's the date on that one?
The date, it was last revised November 2008. So, and I don't know if we can get 150 up there, but you'd have to go on the website probably. Do you want to see it, or no? Okay. Should we just take it back? Okay. Okay. Yeah, and I just noticed that after I saw this again when I was looking at them last night. So, yeah, sorry about that. Any comments about that?
Just the comment that, yeah, that we're a board of 7, so that's what you need to do, so thank you.
Commissioner Johnson.
I guess I'm just a little concerned that this policy mandates that we do 2 self-evaluations a year, but then also that we would have a special work session that's only for doing that. And so I was trying to envision, okay, would that work session be like before or after a meeting instead of a closed session? Would it be instead of our regular work session committee meetings? Because if we only have 22 meetings a year, we have so much work to do always that I'm worried that if we're only doing that eval, that we are putting something else off. I can imagine that at least one of the two per year might be, literally a 20-minute, half hour, like, okay, we're humming along, whereas other years it might take longer. We might need another work session and we would prioritize that. But I guess I'm just concerned about being realistic about committing to two completely separate sessions each year when we only have 22 board meetings. And we have all sorts of meetings on top of those 22, and I'm not sure we need to add two more.
So just to verify, so are you concerned about having I know it's the workload partly, but also the separate work sessions, that's saying, is that?
Yes, because if obviously if there's something that's not clicking at some point in time, maybe it's once every 3 years or something, we would want to prioritize that and have a separate session. But I can imagine that, if there's consistency, there's not a lot of board turnover. We've had one of those sessions in the recent past, and it's just kind of a check-in 6 months later, that it might be in conjunction with some other work session or closed session, or, that we have a short closed session and a short eval session, without having another meeting to do that.
Yeah, so in other words, that it wouldn't have to be separate, I see.
Correct.
Commissioner Boyle, were you going to respond to that? Or?
Yeah, we had this conversation, and part of it was to make sure that the board consistently stays connected to our board goals. We've never had, this is what, our third year into our governance system or framework that allows us to really stay focused that way. And so we thought twice a year was needed. Now, you're right in that it might not be a long meeting. It might not be a meeting that's very complicated, but true to who we are as a board relative to those goals, and that we build everything off of that, we felt that 2 times a year was warranted. But certainly it's up for discussion.
I mean, we could give flexibility by saying may be scheduled rather than shall, and you can think about that. Yeah.
Well, we can rediscuss.
Yeah, you guys can talk about it. I don't feel strongly myself.
I don't think I wasn't there 2 weeks ago, so. Okay.
Yeah. Other feedback for the Policy and Governance Committee on this? Okay.
Can I make one more comment?
Sure, go ahead.
And when we take this back to look at it as well, we really wanted the self-evaluation carried out in conjunction with the annual evaluations that were going on in the district as well, and that takes their goals relative to our goals and what that looks like as well. And that, I guess, we just thought it should be a deeper conversation and that we should stay on top of that, that's all.
Maybe it should, but I guess I can envision then, so if we're getting a communication update from the superintendent, that, that maybe is a somewhat of a shorter meeting, and then we convene into open session for half an hour to talk about the board, eval. So could, just that sentence that says, we'll do nothing else, when we could, depending on the workload.
Good, thanks.
Yeah, and I guess technically they could be considered separate sessions in some way, but yeah,
Sorry.
right. Okay, great. Thank you for bringing that forward. So next is discussion of the Policy 225, evaluation of superintendent. And just an introduction, I'm really kind of the one that initiated this from the last evaluation. I just noticed that we didn't have any written procedures of how to store an evaluation, and I had kind of similar questions of that, so I had asked that we look at that, and because it seemed like a lot of things in the district are kind of just, it hadn't been done that way, and if you have a really new board, they may not know how to do it in the future, so I thought it was important to have it recorded somehow. So first, any questions? I have a couple, but I want to see if any board members have any questions or comments about it. Okay, one thing was, Kirk, when I had done that, had given me some feedback about it, and I don't know if you guys saw it. I can give that to you if you still think you need it, some feedback about that. And what you said is fine in there about it. But I had some other questions too. Like, one thing that I thought would be nice to record was, like, who should sign the evaluation? Should it be just the president, as a whole board? You know, like, think about how we do contracts, right? Should you know, it'd be kind of nice to know how that should be done. I don't think we have an established procedure for that. Another might be, what's the process for becoming a public record? Because we say in there that it will become public, but there's some legal things to think about with that also. So that you might want to discuss and see if you want to put that process in there also. And Kirk, in his discussion with me last year, had some advice about that, and I can give that to you. So it seems like some things that maybe you might want to consider putting in there also and have a discussion about. So I think the intent, what you did was about where it should be filed was right on what we wanted, but I think maybe a couple of those things you might want to think about including. Sure. One question I had, would you want to put in there, like, who should sign it? Should it just be the president? Should it be the whole board? You know, how should that happen? And the other is, there's conditions for ramifications, thinking about making it public as it's stated in here. Is there a process for doing that? And I think there is, that should be followed. And actually the third thing, Joe, is, and the P&G is, he had referred to some specific statutes that make it public record, and that's not referenced in your statutes here, the ones that he mentioned. So I'd like to provide that to you also, so that you can reference those. Okay? Is that good? Okay. So I can give it to Joe, I guess. He's kind of acting as a lead here, it looks like. So I'll give that to Joe and let you know. Is that okay? Good, Patty. Thank you. Well, I just wanted to give you Kirk's thing because he kind of explains in more detail how that statute is referred to and stuff like that. So, any other comments? I know I kind of dominated that one, but I had a lot of communication in the past about that. Anything else? Okay. Okay. Good. Let's see. Administrative team policy 230. Let's see if we can pull that one up. I think I got it here somewhere. So I assume this was the addition of the other positions after the reorganization to T&L department, correct? All right, maybe pull that up. So slow. Just move those tabs around. Okay, so board members, comments, questions, concerns about anything on this one? Okay, wow, we might actually get through a couple today, or a few today. Does anyone want to do a first reading of it then? I did mine.
Just the yellow parts or the whole thing?
I can read it.
I think we need to do the whole thing if I understand it right, unfortunately.
Okay.
You want to do it, Commissioner
Sure.
Lugo? Okay.
The administrative team is made up of the superintendent, executive director of administration, executive director of business services, executive director of human resources, executive director of teaching and learning, director of academic services, director of assessment, director of buildings and grounds, director of pre-K early education, director of food services, director of special education, director of student services, director of technology, principals, and assistant principals. Superintendent as executive officer. The school superintendent, as the executive officer of the Board of Education, is responsible for administering the school district. In executing that responsibility delegated by the board, the superintendent bears major responsibility for translating the board's goals and objectives into an operating educational program. School board members are responsible for establishing policy and evaluating results, and the superintendent is responsible for the execution of those policies. As the chief professional advisor to the board, the superintendent shall be expected to contribute his or her thinking to the board's discussion and deliberations. The superintendent shall develop and maintain administrative rules and regulations needed to carry out board policies. These rules and detailed procedures shall constitute the administrative regulations covering the schools. Additional documents such as student and parent handbooks are an extension of delegated authority given to the administration by the board. The board will approve the employee handbook annually. Executive directors and the superintendent. The superintendent may delegate portions of the daily operation of the school district to the executive directors. The superintendent may delegate supervision of the business affairs of the school district to the executive director of business services, and the prime responsibility for personnel functions to the executive director of human resources. The superintendent may delegate duties and staff authority to the executive director of teaching and learning and the executive director of administration in their respective areas. Directors. The directors report to the executive directors and are responsible for the overall conduct, organization, direction, and supervision of the programs and coordinators within their areas as designated by the superintendent. Building principals. The principal is in charge of his or her school and is responsible for the overall conduct, organization, direction, and supervision of the building and of the educational program. The principal is supervised and evaluated by the superintendent and/or the executive directors as designated by the superintendent. The principal will work collaboratively with district employees, families, and students in order to carry out his or her respective duties and to help develop and provide a guaranteed and viable curriculum for all students. Assistant principals. Assistant principals are vital parts of the administrative team at the middle and high school levels. The principal supervises assistant principals and may delegate authority to assistant principals in areas of school operation in order to ensure collaboration, direction, and organization of the educational program and the physical plant.
Great, thank you. Yeah, Commissioner Wu.
If we can go back to the second paragraph or third paragraph. I question why do we come up with the language such as may delegate responsibility in comparison to other function of the different administrator. We have word like is responsible or is in charge. It doesn't seem like we give enough, or maybe we have good reason to use the language the way we did for that particular positions. I'm referring to the executive director and superintendent's paragraph.
So, for example, let me make sure I'm in the right spot with you. Are responsible shall. I'm looking for the first may.
The first may is on the first line, first sentence.
As is responsible. Oh, way up there. Oh, okay.
Paragraph number 3.
The executive directors and the superintendent part, right?
Correct.
Okay. The superintendent may delegate portions of the daily operation. That part is what you're talking about.
So the question then is, what does the executive director do? What is in charge?
Okay, good question.
It's unclear.
So,
Commissioner Vu, just turn off your thing. Go ahead, Superintendent Herman.
So in the areas of, the 4 areas that the executive directors oversee, it provides some flexibility in terms of assignment of duties. They all have job descriptions, which I think we shared with you at one point. By saying may, it just provides some flexibility in terms of shifting duties and responsibilities around.
I still don't think it's consistent with the rest.
So let's look at the rest, Commissioner Vu. So we go down, and you're referring to, say, like under building principles, for example, how it's different? Sure. What they are in charge of? Someone remind me, in the places where we described the job duties, the other one, did we do that for principals? Is that in there? We did the job descriptions last time, right? Isn't that what we did? If I remember right? Everyone's looking at me. You were just saying, for example, we have job descriptions for everyone, right? Right. And so, like here, it's saying for building principals, for example, this is basically sort of a job description of the building principles. It just made me think: is that consistent with the job description we have written elsewhere, or is it even in there? I
It
don't
might be a
remember.
good idea to take this policy back and review it along with the job descriptions.
After I read the whole thing.
Sorry, Commissioner Vu started it. It's not my fault. But do you see my point? Because we have job descriptions of building principals, right? Do we not? And this is basically starting like a job description of them, is it not? And I think Commissioner Vu has a point about consistency in language between the two. I think he has a point about that. So, sorry. Yes, exactly. Something about aligning with the job description perhaps might be helpful. I hate to do that, but but it seems important that because I could see in future hiring that if there are different descriptions, what is their job, you know? So, okay.
So what you're saying is you want all the mays changed to will, or?
Well, I like you just discuss it and see how you can align those, but also make sure like this description under building principles, for example, is it either refer to the job description of building principles in the other policy or make them the same? Did you do that? So maybe they are.
Probably not as deeply though. And the other thing too, when we put in the director piece with the reorganization, maybe we can do a little work there too, just because it's not stated the same as the other parts of the policy. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you guys can talk about it again. All right. Okay. Okay, anything else on that? Okay, so we'll send that back to PG. Thanks for the work on that. And Joe, we'll try not to have you read it again and then stop. Okay. All right, last item is the budget committee report on a referendum discussion. Normally, as you know, we'd usually do a committee report at the beginning and we just give a report of what's going on. But we thought, you know, with the importance of the referendum, it would be good to give the report here in this part of the agenda so that if board members wanted to give any feedback, any suggestions, they could do that. Otherwise, it wouldn't normally be possible to do that. So we just thought it was appropriate to give you that option before we meet in committee again. So Chu has the budget committee report for that, and go ahead, Chu, and you can describe what we did.
Okay, the budget committee met on November 9th. We discussed what would happen if the referendum fails and what would happen if it passes. We also went over what administration felt were priorities for the district. After hearing what administration felt were priority areas and reflecting on what was shared at the November 2nd board meeting on the findings from the community forums, the budget committee identified 4 areas of importance, and they are class size, facilities, technology, and quality.
And I would clarify quality through staff retention.
Quality education overall, yes. And that would be part of it.
Joe, go ahead, use your...
Sorry. You said technology, facilities, and quality through staff retention?
Class size was the first one.
Oh.
Then facilities, then technology, and then we added, how shall we say, a quality education through, quality staff, basically.
Okay.
In effect, some kind of compensation piece up for it.
Quality education, which includes, to have that, you have to have quality staff. So yes, that would be part of it.
And we discussed how to get a dollar amount on that. And one thing we had discussed was to figure out, we'll have a new compensation plan at some point, but, for example, what would staff have gotten if they had moved to progression in their careers? What would they have gotten under the normal, what they're under now? And using that as a dollar amount to think about for the referendum that could go into a new compensation plan. So that was part of it. Commissioner Lugan.
And with the facilities part, which areas were you looking at? Did you talk with Larry? What list was it the
we didn't go through the list.
Okay.
We just know what we need annually, really, to keep maintenance budget up, and I don't remember, I think we said basically what we need to be at, if I remember right. Abby could correct me on that.
Yeah, I think so. Based upon our square footage, we should probably be spending anywhere from about 3.6 million to 4.7 million every year. So that's what we talked about.
Well, we specifically,
Commissioner Duex, go ahead.
we specifically talked about security into the buildings and being able to see who's at the door.
Yeah, and I'm imagining that would be, we'd have to look, the administration would have to look at the priorities each year for that 3.6 or 4 million. And hopefully, that would include some of that. We have discussed that a lot, that's for sure, and so has demo trends and facilities. Commissioner Hammer-Boyle.
So with class size, facilities, technology, and quality, which not in any order, right? It's just those are the 4 that got pulled out?
That's our list, right.
Okay. When we looked at the items for strategic planning and things that they brought about, I wrote these down because they just hit a chord with me about thinking ahead and what the possibilities are. I mean, that could fit in there as far as quality. Provide directions, and then hitting critical issues, which you pull those out, maintain high expectations, and so our budget would reflect that. So I went through in my own head kind of some things that would make it more tangible. So, is there money that's needed to research more on the whole child data? I mean, that's quality, and is that a cost? I know that innovation's been brought up as far as quality and some choices and things that have to do with that. What's the budget piece there? I'm just being a little more specific. Compensation you talked about. We need to make some people whole that have been waiting for a very long time. And you brought that up. That's quality, right? That fits under there.
That's, the primary piece we talked about.
Let's see. What will the cost be or the spending on getting, my thing too is if we go to referendum, that in itself is going to be a cost. I guess I'd like to, if we go there, we'll talk about that too, right?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Well, it's just a budget thing. Maybe I threw these all on a piece of paper, and I'm trying to kind of look at, another one as far as quality was the cost of a communication plan. That came out of the strategic plan, or the systems analysis. What is a communication plan? And is that part of quality, or because that was part of the systems analysis. And what is the money attached? You'll find that out. That's needed to support educational relevance and the increase in achievement. That's under quality, I suppose. Yeah, I have some more here too. What will it cost to reestablish our National Board Incubation Program? Is there a cost there? Tonight they brought up the co-teaching. That's more money. If we're really seeing some progress there in a co-teaching model, you need to have more people to do a co-teaching model. Money to support the homelessness piece, that's quality. I know that we just increased staff to support that. School-based mental health services, that was another thing that came out that we're spending, there's more, there's money there. The non-fiscal items, civics test, I know it's not much, but I mean, there were 80 slides for non-fiscal items. We have to go and see what the cost of that is too. So just some ideas that I had.
Okay. Commissioner Luginbill, I think is next.
So on the quality education, again, through quality staff, has there been any discussion thus far in your committee on looking at the potential cost of a base wage increase for hourly employees and the possible reinstatement of classified staff vacation days.
Do you mean base wage increase beyond
I'm sorry.
CPI that's around?
I'm sorry, I'm talking hourly wage. The the current people who are making minimum wage during the summer months, possibly increasing that.
I think this is just my opinion speaking. Really, what we got to do, I think we got to look at the kind of big picture. Here's what we need to, retain and attract staff, and I think the new compensation plan will determine, how that should be worked out. I see what you're saying. It's specific issues, like with low minimum wage, for example. Maybe the compensation plan itself will address that. We'll have to see. But our budget committee is not getting into that fine a detail about this piece, that piece, that piece. I think it's more like we think we need to invest money in our staff. How much, last administration, how much really do we need for that? Give us a dollar amount, I think, right?
That's what I've gotten as well.
Okay. Commissioner Zhang is next, then I'll go.
Okay, we also made another date, which is a meeting date, which is on the 30th, and I would like your list, honestly, if you can send that to us, and if any other board members have ideas that surface when they leave this, when they leave here, please send that to us.
What's the best way to send that to your committee?
Well, it'll be in the minutes, correct? Or no, you may not have gotten those.
I did, but there were a few things when both you and I were questioning what she was saying that I would want to get.
So maybe she can just get it in the minutes. She can just get it turned.
I'll have a more succinct list. I put everything down and I have to kind of peek through it, and I was in a rush, and so I'm sorry.
I have to say one thing that I appreciate much, and Chris, we have talked a lot about innovation, and we have the Charter Choice Committee, and to me, a lot of community is very interested in us being more innovative, and that might actually be something that community would support. So it's something to think about, I think. So, other comments, questions, or feedback for the Budget Committee? Commissioner Johnson? Yeah.
Okay, so maybe I missed this, I apologize, but so what's the time frame for you? Are you going to have a preliminary budget list on November 30th from the administrators on all of these things?
Well, we asked for that. Okay. for those items, those 4 items.
Okay.
We did ask for that. Yeah, right, for those 4 items. Right, for those 4 items.
So they'll be coming back, or coming to the Budget Committee with initial recommendation on, this is, about how much money we think we would need in order to, well, facilities is easy. And, so to properly care for our facilities each year, to do these things so that we can start talking about dollar amounts. The community keeps asking, are we going in April, and what kind of referendum we're going to have? And, I think we need to start answering some of those questions for the public.
I agree. So, the intent was to have those for our budget meeting. Superintendent?
The only thing that would be problematic is we're still awaiting the report from the Compensation Committee, and at this point, I don't think they've finalized their recommendations. So while we can cost out facilities, technology, some of our programmatic needs, the compensation piece will be different.
And aren't the compensation committees coming back with, here's the model we want to use, and that model may have 2 parts. One, if we weren't to get any more money, and this is how much money we think we would need in order to kind of bring everyone whole. I mean,
I'm looking at Kay because those are the questions they've been working on.
So the way that Bob Butler has been facilitating the work of these 3 groups is to indicate that we need to have 2 proposals to bring forward to the board, but not necessarily 2 that say, well, here's the difference if we do have the money or we don't have the money, just 2 proposals, and then hoping the board's going to find the money. I mean, Chris is on the committee. She's been kind of saying that since the get-go, was that it wasn't the committee's responsibility to try to figure out where the money was going to come from, just to bring forward 2 different options for the board to consider for each one of these employee groups, and then be able to incorporate whichever one we go with, the price tag of that, into the work that you're doing.
And the Budget Committee, to kind of answer your question, what we did ask for is, though, just assuming our old plan, what would they have gotten to go into progression? And that'll give us a rough dollar amount of what we really think we need. And that could just, apply to the new compensation plan when we distribute it according to that compensation plan. That was the idea that I had mentioned in Budget Committee, so we can start getting a dollar amount for that. Commissioner Hambuck-Boyle.
And I'm going to be the devil's advocate here too. The civics test was a good example tonight. I think the information we got from WASB when we went to the workshop, I think the non-fiscal items that were put in the budget that will cost us money that we do not get additional money for needs to be figured out as well. Because that's a budget item that is not part of, I think it needs to be part of the conversation. So I know we have 4, but there are implications in those non-fiscal items that we're required to do now that do cost money.
Commissioner Johnson.
Sure, you can measure them as they cost money, or you can be realistic and say the legislature has decided that we're going to stop doing things that we find important to do things that they find important. So it's not that it costs money, it means we're giving up other things that we think are important.
Oh, you're right. I think it always should be framed as if we have to do this, what aren't we going to be doing because of the money we don't have? Yep. Good point.
Well, I would just, maybe final comment, I'm not sure, is we have to be careful that we don't just start loading up and saying, well, I like this in it, I like that, and I like this, and we got to focus on what our main priorities are, and what do we think is best for our students, what can we do for them, and not just try and load up everything that we would like in there. I think we got to be a little careful with that. And I'm not implying that, but I know that list is huge of the non-fiscal items.
But we have to do them.
Commissioner Vu.
I think we also start to talk about the ideas of what if the referendum does not go through. I think we begin to talk about that also.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think many people in the public forums ask those questions, but I think we need to do it in a broad way. So for example, the compensation study, when we get that, we say, okay, this is what we want to do, but embedded in that conversation is if we don't get the money, then we're not going to do those things. And so there, I think some people want to see, like, here's the cut list and we're going to promise to do that. Well, why would we waste our time when we're trying to educate the public about a referendum to come up with a very detailed, we're going to lay off this many art teachers and this many Phi-Ed teachers and this many elementary teachers, because that's work that we don't have time to do. And when we're optimistically going, this is the plan we would need to focus on. So I think, there's a balance to say, well, yeah, if we don't pass the referendum, we're going to continue to spend 1.5 million or 1.6 million on facilities instead of 4.6. So, some of that is, just embedded in the conversation, but I don't think we have to come up with a separate, like, we're going to threaten to cut these things, because we don't really know until push comes to shove when you have to vote on them. It's very different when you're talking in hypotheticals. Yeah, we're going to make class sizes double. Well, when it comes down to it, maybe we're going to change bus routes instead, because you don't know until you actually have to vote to say, I'm going to cut that thing. So I think we have to keep it, somewhat big picture.
And I'd like to add that the committee, that's how we've been looking at it, big picture. We don't go into details and how to fix certain areas, and that's because when you start doing that, you start adding up. And when you start adding up, we've heard it at the community forums where people are saying, I'm on Social Security, I have a set income, and for me to give any more, it's just not, possible. So what I'm looking at is a realistic number that will fix what we need, and obviously help with our innovation and stuff like that.
Okay, good discussion. Anything else? Okay, great. So I think that's the last thing on our committee reports. Any new agenda items from any board members? Commissioner Johnson.
I would like the resolution from the legislative report on the agenda.
Anything else? Excuse me, anything else? Commissioner Hammack, I see your light on.
I
You have
do.
something?
I did. I would like some information on our district social media, Web Connect community and alumni, and who's, you know, what that structure is within the district, because I think if we go to referendum, that's a big piece that we need going. And
So are you asking if we have it, or what's the
yeah,
question?
a report or something that we kind of know what the logistics are for that,
Okay.
because that'll be a big item that I'd like to know about ahead of time.
Okay, okay. Anything else? Great. That's it. Other business? I don't think so. I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion from Commissioner Hammack-Boyle. Do I have a second? Second from Commissioner Duax. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Nice meeting. Meeting adjourned.
This program is recorded and presented by Chippewa Valley Community Television. Chippewa Valley Community Television is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, you can contact us by calling 715-839-5067 or on the web at www.cbctv.org.